I'm Simon Calder, and 40 minutes ago I was in the shadow of the Shard at London Bridge. Now I'm deep in the Kent countryside. Even so close to the capital, you can lose yourself in a green and pleasant land, explore some of the most intriguing stories of England's historical mosaic, and eat, drink and stay in style. Kent is decorated with all kinds of castles, but Hever is the place to begin. This was the childhood home of Anne Boleyn, the doomed second wife of Henry VIII and mother of Queen Elizabeth. Hever Castle's origins are 13th century, but just before Anne was born, the Boleyn family expanded it in the latest Tudor style. Later, as the Victorian era came to a close, it was abandoned for a while until the American multimillionaire William Waldorf Astor decided to make Hever his corner of the Garden of England. Astor created gorgeous gardens in which to place his collection of classical sculptures, adding a fresh dimension to a location at the heart of English history. Duncan Leslie, the chief executive, says the key episode in Hever Castle's 7 centuries was Henry VIII's romantic interlude.
We're most famous for Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, and clearly that's quite difficult to beat in terms of big buck story. She wasn't going to be with Henry in an intimate way unless he divorced his wife. So it was a big story, and Henry VIII changed his religion at the time, which was changed the religion of the whole country to make that happen, which is just astonishing.
You can even spend the night here thanks to some luxury B&B accommodation. But right now I'm going east of Eden, crossing the River Eden, a tributary of the Medway, to a stately home with another Henry and Anne connection. For me, Penshurst Place is pretty close to perfection in honey-coloured stone. Queen Elizabeth, daughter of Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII, is known to have visited Penshurst Place. The current aristocratic residents are Viscount Delisle and his wife Lady Delisle, who told me what the visitor will see.
Well, they see the staterooms, which have always been the staterooms, and the Great Hall, which you can see with the pitched roof there, is the most staggering room, which was the original part of the house. And then they go through the solar, through the tapestry room and Queen Elizabeth room.
Penshurst Place is also the location for some heavenly horticulture, starting here in the Italian walled garden. I'm heading now for a new continent. Perhaps you'll join me. In the 1840s, the Reverend Barham wrote that the world, according to her best geographers, is divided into Europe, Asia, Africa, America and Romney Marsh. This southern extreme of Kent is a land that shouldn't really exist. The bare fields were reclaimed over centuries from the sea, creating a cul-de-sac for the nation. Paul Hadaway is from the Kent Wildlife Trust.
Romney Marsh is just one of those iconic landscapes that we have in the southeast. This is a true frontier, and when you look across the vista behind me, you can just see the rolling fields that go for miles away towards what was once the original coastline, the escarpment of the North Kent Downs that runs across there. So this is an area that has got a long and resilient history of people, wildlife and landscape interacting together.
The main attractions in the marsh are the churches, most of which have outlived their congregations. The most singularly beautiful, St Thomas a Becket in Fairfield. You find it on the lane that leads south from Appledore, or rather off the lane, floating serenely in a field that turns out to be an island. How many times have you been to a church where the instruction is pick up the key from the farmhouse along the lane? Let's see if it's going to work and let me into the spiritual heart of Romney Marsh. The origins of the church are medieval and the exterior is 18th century, but the interior is like no other church I have ever seen. Instead of everyone facing the front, families would sit in these box pews looking at each other. Mind you, the preacher could keep an eye on everyone from the only triple-decker pulpit in Kent. Romney Marsh, the final frontier. It might not look like a great military fortification, but in fact the Royal Military Canal is. It was dug to amputate the marsh from the rest of Britain as the last line of defence against Napoleonic expansionism. The longer you spend in Romney Marsh, the greater the sense of otherworldliness. To reconnect with the rest of Kent and to find somewhere fresh to spend the night, just follow the line of the Royal Military Canal here to the Port Lim Mansion Hotel. Stylish, romantic, attractive. No, not me, the Sir Philip Sassoon Bridal Suite, named after the man who created the house. Winston Churchill, Lawrence of Arabia, Edward and Mrs. Simpson. They've all stayed here, but not in the same room on the same night. The Mansion House is located within Port Lim Reserve, where there are other accommodation options such as Elephant Lodge. It's just like the Serengeti in Tanzania, only the wildlife's just a little bit different. Hello. If you prefer indigenous cuisine, then let me recommend the Checkers, a pub in the beautiful village of Lewes, spelt loose, but pronounced to rhyme with muse. The landlord, Shaw, gets all the food and drink he can from within the county of Kent. I'm drinking Rocking Robin, which is brewed about a mile away, and all the meat is from local butchers too. By the way, my fellow drinkers are men of Kent because we're east of the River Medway. Those from west of the river are Kentish men. And these are Lewes women. So you've dug the Channel Tunnel. What do you do with all the spoil? Create Samphire Hoe, reclaimed land beneath the White Cliffs of Dover, owned by Eurotunnel, which runs shuttles from Folkestone along the coast to Calais, just over there. And for an even better view of France, I'm heading up there. This is a place of superlatives. I'm at the closest point in Britain to continental Europe, just 23 miles away across the English Channel, which itself is one of the busiest sea lanes in the world. And I reckon you're looking at perhaps one of the finest views in England. A large slab of the White Cliffs of Dover is owned by the National Trust, which organises everything to make it as accessible as possible. The General Manager, Virginia Portman, says she's constantly inspired by the cliffs.
To me, they're a symbol of Britain, really. I think particularly in these days where we're commemorating the anniversaries of the wars, you know, there are a lot of people that come here that have memories from their childhood. I don't think it's exaggerated to say that they're a symbol of hope for a lot of people.
You can take some well thought out walks, of which my favourite follows the coast around to another National Trust landmark. And if you've still got some energy left after the 2-mile walk to the South Foreland Lighthouse, you can climb 76 steps to the top, where you are 345 feet above the English Channel. Yet more spectacular views and another superlative. in winter, this is the place in Britain that first sees the sunrise. And here is your reward. The cottage at the foot of the lighthouse has been turned into Mrs. Knott's tea room in honour of the lady whose family ran the lighthouse for many years. What I love about it is the way that it's been recreated with the help of everybody's old china and all kinds of mementos of pre-war life. I began my trip through Kent at a castle, and I've ended it here at Dover Castle, a magnificent compendium of fortifications with added surprises such as this extraordinary Roman lighthouse built around 120 AD. From here, it used to be a week's march to London. Today, you can get there in just 66 minutes thanks to Britain's fastest railway. Or you could get on your bike, because this is the start of Britain's longest bicycle trail, Route 1, from here to the top of Scotland. So you can meander back through Kent and maybe even get across to Essex. It's not quite time travel, but it is impressive. In 55 minutes, I've travelled from London Liverpool Street through the eastern suburbs of the capital to the furthest flung station in the county on the main line, Manningtree, which I think is the gateway to one of the loveliest parts of Essex. It's a great place to begin an exploration of a county that has much to offer the traveller. Sure, from Canvey Island to Clacton and Southend to Stansted, there's plenty that's familiar about Essex, but I want to give you a different perspective. This is one of my favourite bike rides, with the sun on my back heading deep into Constable country. An area of outstanding natural beauty. No, not me, Dedham Vale, this lovely corner of northeast Essex where John Constable went to school and painted. Before though I start to explore the artist's trail, I'm going to set the controls for the Heart of the Sun Inn to grab a bite to eat. The sun always seems to shine in Essex. Constable found much to celebrate artistically in the rolling countryside and big eastern sky of this part of the world, but he also included the church here in Dedham in no fewer than 26 paintings. Angela Horner is a local artist who gets inspiration from Constable country.
It's the beauty of the area. You have a natural valley, the church, which is an aspect that Constable painted many times, Dedham Church in the far distance. It also is an absolutely beautiful little rural area with the Stour Valley and a Stour River running through it, and he was brought up on the river.
For a small Essex village, St Mary's Church is both vast and venerable. The present incarnation is almost 500 years old, exactly as Constable would have seen it, and it includes a painting of his, the Ascension. You can follow the south bank of the Stour through Little Hawksley, Belsham St Paul and a personal favourite place named Steeple Bumstead to Saffron Walden, the picture postcard perfect market town on the placid northwest frontier of Essex. It's a lovely place to wander and to find independent shops such as Art Décoratif, whose proprietor is Anne Miller.
I've been here 12 years and we have regular customers from all over the world. and we specialise in vintage jewellery, but we sell all small objets d'art. People come from all over East Anglia and London to get the experience of a small market town. It's just got a unique character. Apparently it's got very strong ley lines which attracts people, very similar to Glastonbury, and once you come here you don't want to leave.
Since Saffron Walden was on the main coaching route between London and Cambridge about 5 centuries ago, you won't be astonished to learn there's some excellent pubs here. The Cross Keys is officially a 4-star inn with 500 years of history, some delicious food and also the chance to stay the night. Go and have a look. There's just 6 rooms with home comforts carefully installed within a half-timbered chunk of history. And if you want breakfast without the bed, well,
is your cappuccino?
Look at that. Then I recommend Molly's Coffee and Cake Shop, just tucked around the back of the Cross Keys, where you can get a full English and the classiest cappuccino in town. Time to check out Saffron Walden's turf maze, thought to be around 800 years old and the largest example in the world. Yes, this is a turf maze, and here's the idea. There is 1 mile of turf track cut here. It's the foremost of 8 surviving turf mazes in England. And the idea is that you walk every single inch of it. It will take you about 20 minutes, but unlike a real tall maze, there's no chance of getting lost. If you get stuck, well, you can just hop from one bit to another. At the top end of Essex, you reach Audley End, one of the finest stately homes in England, in a perfect English country garden. English heritage. Yes, it's theirs. And it is. It was once 3 times larger, but the owners downsized it to make it easier to manage, with many of the stones going to help build Cambridge. A new corner of the property has just been opened, bringing a fresh dimension to Audley End, as guide Kim Anscombe told me.
Well, we've recently recreated the nursery that was used by the children in the 1820s, and this is the nursery that they would have occupied. It was derelict up until 6 months ago, and it has taken 2 years for the curators to source the furniture, and it is as it was, and the children would have recognised it as it is today. It's a space that we want children to come and enjoy. They can play with all of the toys, sit on the rocking horse, play with the toys and the dolls, and experience the Victorian nursery. We have dressing up, hats and bonnets. It's all been made for the children to try and use.
The house at Audley End has no cellar, and so the fuel was kept up here in the coal gallery, winched in through the windows. Also here are the 18th century version of the ensuite bathroom, hip baths, which were taken to the residents' rooms along with buckets of hot water. So much for upstairs. You also get a pretty good view of what life was like downstairs here in the service wing. Capability Brown designed the grounds to place Audley End amid suitably splendid landscapes. But Essex also specialises in seascapes, with the longest shore of any county in England. How big is Essex? Well, it's 50 miles as the Kittiwake flies from the grounds of Audley End House to here at one of my favourite hidden corners of the county, Burnham on Crouch, starting point for an adventure on the water. Burnham on Crouch is a great place to acquaint yourself with the crinkled coastline that wraps around Essex, even if you don't have your own sailing yacht. I'm stepping aboard the Royal Corinthian Yacht Club launch with Kieran Alexander of the Essex Wildlife Trust. The River Crouch is close enough to the North Sea to be tidal, which means there's a rich diversity of wildlife.
Essex is really special for wildlife because of the huge amount of habitat that is available to them. It's unlike other places where we don't have as much habitat. Essex has a huge amount of habitat and it's relatively undisturbed. It might sound odd saying that about Essex, but Essex is and has places that are truly, truly wild.
And a short way downstream, you'll find a remarkable construction project. What's happening behind me looks industrial, but in fact, the innards of London are helping to create the great outdoors in Essex. Here's what's going on. The spoil from the Crossrail project, the railway going underneath central London, is brought out here by ship. It is then being used to build up the island behind me, which will then be flooded with salt water to create one of the largest wetland reserves in Europe. Back on dry land, there's plenty more to see of this tranquil waterside town before it's time to leave. Branch line Britain at its very best, yet London-Liverpool Street is barely an hour away from here. Thank you for joining me on a trip around some of the treasures of Essex, ready and waiting for you to enjoy next time you need an escape from the modern world. Let's see if it's going to let me into the spiritual heart of to the top, where you are 345 feet above the English Channel. Sorry, do apologise. I tripped over something, which is quite funny. I'll probably put in the outtakes.